Edward Laos.
Welcome to Travel Talk, brought to you by the Hotel Guide, the global voice of luxury and boutique hospitality. Featuring Edward Leos.
Good morning, everybody. Edward Leos here, publisher of the Hotel Guide and your host of Travel Talk. Man, I'm really excited about today's episode. I've got Kellen Mond, who have actually kind of followed his career. We'll get to that in reference to the show as well. But I'm really glad that we were able to reconnect and have him on the show today. So, Kellen, how are you doing?
I've been good. I'm staying here right now in Houston, Texas, where it seems like everyone is getting out of town because of the heat. But we're enjoying the summers, and we're ready to get into the fall.
Oh yeah, I think actually was having dinner with my daughter yesterday, and we were talking about that, and she's like, "Man, I really wish it was fall already." And you start talking about football, so talking about just cooler weather.
Yeah.
It's nice to go to the beach and when it's 100 degrees, but when you're not at the beach or something like that, it's not so much fun. So why don't you tell our guests, not our guests, but our listeners a little bit about you and kind of who you are and how you got to where you are now. We'll kind of dive into that as well.
Yeah, awesome. I first appreciate you for having me. Played quarterback at Texas A&M, was drafted into the NFL, played for multiple NFL teams from the Vikings, the Browns, Colts, and then a short stint with the Saints, and did some smaller stuff in the UFL. And since then, after the NFL transitioned into the world of fine art. So everything from selling artwork, hosting exhibitions, and, one side of it is sort of the selling artwork portion. And then the other side of the art world is hosting and sort of the experience business. So, any sort of way that I can put on unique experiences, whether it's travel related or art exhibitions, to be able to host people is sort of the business I'm in, and I've loved it so far.
No, obviously it's amazing when people first think of you. They think of Texas A&M and the NFL and football, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I love what you're doing now. We crossed paths obviously on LinkedIn and reconnected in reference to what you're doing with your art and your exhibition. Tell me a little bit about how you got to that and how important is creativity to you and as a business model too.
Yeah. So, the world of photography started off as simply just a hobby back in 2021 when I was a rookie in the NFL. And it was sort of just the perfect balance to the chaotic world of the NFL football life. And, that was sort of the early moments in wherever I was taking my camera or wherever we were traveling to. I was taking my camera overseas to different places in the off season, and just kind of always had the camera in my hand. But I would say my photography journey and sort of craft really started to elevate and really started to see a lot more growth in 2023. And that was all me just being in Cleveland, Ohio, when I was playing for the Browns, and I would walk around any neighborhood, any area you could think about throughout Cleveland, and anything from urban landscape, architecture, street photography, and just sort of seeing how creative I can be. So now that I've turned, the hobby into a business, still being able to keep that sort of creative side has been really, beneficial for me, where, a lot of the art world is sort of kind of strips you of that freedom and of that creativity. And it's like, how can you create something that somebody else wants to see? But what does the artist want to create? And so, since then, everywhere I travel to in the country, outside the country, I take my camera and I document as much as I can.
Oh, that's awesome. I love what you're doing, taking the creative side of things, turning into, a hobby into a business. What do you foresee over the next year for your business, or what are some of your goals that you want to have with it?
So, it was great to be able to get your first art exhibition under your belt. And, there were so many people, because it was my debut show, that were kind of walking into it, and they were like, I don't even know what I'm walking into. And there's the one thing about when you say you're an artist or a photographer is with that term or title, there's really no specification on what level you're on, whether you're selling artwork for $100 or you're selling artwork for $100,000.
Yeah.
So many people, the art world just looks completely different. But we had an amazing venue, one of Austin's, I guess now, second highest or tallest towers, as our residence at 6G, and we essentially had their whole event space and turned it into an art gallery essentially. And so the turnout was great. We had roughly 100 people, just a majority sort of executives from around the state of Texas, wives, and then some professional athletes. So it was a private event. And so, the next goal would be able to see if we can make that even better and, maybe turn it into more of a tour where you're doing stuff around the state of Texas before, the next goal would be being able to get represented by a gallery and sort of expanding. And, those sort of networks help you expand out a lot further than, just your Texas region.
No, that's good. And I love what you're doing with regards to getting it started. Austin was a great place to start in reference to the venue. The venue was awesome in the pictures that I saw as well. So I love what you're doing there. So I know we talked a little bit about your football journey, but I do know a lot about Texas A&M, having 3 kiddos who have gone to the university. I want to do a little pitch here. One, because it's my podcast, and 2, because you're Nagy as well. Tell me something that you learned from your time at Texas A&M that has transformed or transferred into what you're doing now in your business life.
I think I'll probably say 2 things. One is sort of the attention to detail, which obviously that's a quarterback thing, but something that was just extremely driven in me from Jimbo Fisher and all the coaches that I had, where every single detail when it comes to drops or anything quarterback related is at the utmost importance to be able to succeed at the quarterback level and even at the NFL level. And then you move that into the art space, and when it comes to details of hanging artwork, the position of artwork at an exhibition, deciding what should, when you have a photograph, what size should this be, what edition, whether edition of 3, edition of 8, and then, really staying on the people in terms of the production of the artwork, on whether it's canvas, fine art paper, and understanding that there's no such thing as 9 out of 10 quality, 9.8 out of 10. It has to be 10 out of 10, where everything is at the utmost perfection. And so that's something that I've really been able to, take from the football side. The attention to detail and everything must be perfect, and just that really high standard, then move it into the art space. Then I think the other side, which moving into the art space that I've sort of realized over time, is how much, especially once you get into more high ticket price artwork and more sort of investment level, everything turns into relationship based.
Yeah.
And everything's about relationships, meeting people. And so much of the art world is not just, somebody loving your artwork, it's somebody buying into your story. And so they have your artwork on your wall, but they're really, when that's a talking point piece or statement piece, when they have people over in an executive office or maybe at their home, there's a story behind that. It's not just the artist, it's, what does Kellen Mond represent and those things like that. So just attention to detail, and then, learning how to build and care for quality relationships.
No, those are good takeaways right there. So you mentioned about what does Kellen Mond kind of stand for in that. Give our audience a little bit of taste in what they could expect with your art and who you are moving forward.
Yeah, so I think one of the really unique things, and sometimes it's beneficial and then sometimes it actually hurts you in the art world, is that there's never been an NFL quarterback, or I don't even think potentially an NFL player, who's moved into the art space. Majority of artists come from, an art background where they've been doing it usually pre their, MFA or, college.
Yeah.
Or sometimes they skip that and just move straight into the art world, and they've been doing it for a long time. So the part that it helps you is that me having the background that I have, I'm able to get into a lot of doors and, do some really unique things based on people that I know and relationships. Mm-hmm. The part that hurts you is that the art world has operated on such a traditional model for so long, and I don't come from a traditional art background. So
Yeah.
sometimes you're looked at in sort of a way of, this is sort of a hobby sort of thing. And I try to make that extremely clear. And it's one of the reasons that I actually left, the game of football and, wasn't going to continue to chase the NFL, is because if people are going to invest into your business and your career and your craft, especially at really high quality artwork, they want to know that this isn't some hobby that you're doing. And then at the quickest of moments, you can just get up and leave because football is the main thing or something else is the main thing. So once I realized that, like, art is the main everyday craft. Obviously, you have so much of the building relationships, managing and doing a bunch of marketing stuff, hosting events, and that allows me to explore, meet people, and opens me up to other ventures. But art is the everyday craft for me, and I'm only going to continue to get better as I get represented by galleries, start doing more shows, and continue to expand my network and reach.
Nice. Well, I love the business side of things. Now let's go to the personal side, because we're a travel podcast, which is our niche, if you will. But I
Yeah.
always like to ask our guests, what are some of your favorite travel destinations you've been to? And then what are some of your bucket list spots that you got in mind as well?
I would say, I have I think first I have to preface, it sort of depends your plans. Are you going with a wife and it's sort of like the getaway trip? Do you want to be extremely busy? But my two favorite, I would think, would be Costa Rica and Colombia. Uh, the only negative, which was a little bit difficult, was the language barrier in Colombia.
Yeah.
But the food was great. Honestly, the cheapest place we went for just such high quality. We spent, and I still tell everyone to this day, we spent maybe $70 for two people for full course meals, drinks, everything, and at five-star restaurants in Colombia. So that was definitely a brilliant trip. And then Costa Rica, my sort of travel style is, how can I be sort of the contrarian and do things differently than other people? So
Yeah.
when we went to Costa Rica, we actually stayed in the rainforest right next to the Areno volcano. And we did a tour of the Areno volcano, went up on the volcano, took tours throughout the rainforest, and ended up doing some photography stuff down there. And my actually most recent, or my exhibition from a few weeks ago, had a picture from that trip in Costa Rica, and that was the consensus number one favorite, photograph from the exhibition. So, but yeah, both of those were great. I've been to Jamaica, was a great trip. Turks and Caicos is a great getaway. Not a lot to do, but I think a little bit overpriced in my
Yeah.
opinion. But Drake, since he went whatever 4 or 5 years ago, maybe longer, has made it sort of this cultural place where everybody wants to go for a trip. So they just jacked up this
Everything.
cost and everything. And then bucket list, I would think, maybe like Barbados, Bahamas would be really cool. And then sort of my next big photography project, I want to do a 3-city tour in southern Spain and maybe cross over into Morocco. But, that's sort of like the big photography trip where it's not going to be family oriented. It's going to be, how can I get away from the family and do some awesome stuff in a totally different side of the world.
Nice. Well, those are all great destinations, definitely, and I love your insight into that as well. So, as we're wrapping up here, got any final thoughts in reference to anything we talked about, your business, things to expect?
Because the exhibition went really well in Austin, we're looking to do, so the title of the exhibition was Electric Unseen, and we're going to look to do Electric Unseen Part 2 in Houston. So still in the super early stages, sort of figuring out partnerships and venue and stuff like that. So nothing is, guaranteed, but me living in Houston, obviously it'd be great to get a bunch of Aggies here. And then, I think the Houston art scene is extremely underrated, and just sort of lacks a lot of the infrastructure that matches up with the wealth and also the growth, especially with suburbia Houston. So going to be looking to do that, and then just continue to host events, Do a lot of stuff with Texas A&M. I'm hosting or I'm doing a speaking engagement at the Houston A&M Club in a few weeks. So staying busy, just continuing to build the brand and looking where that takes me.
No, definitely. Well, you've got the influence and the backing of the Aggie Network, so that's always a good start right there. Whether
Yeah.
whether you're but if you're in business, man, that's the best thing for everybody right there. So
Yeah.
uh, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast today, Kellen, and learning a little bit about yourself off the football field and what you're doing with your photography and in reference to your art and everything like that. I know great things are coming your way, so absolute pleasure having you on today.
Appreciate you, Ed. Thank you.
You got it. Hey, to all of our listeners and followers out there, you know the drill. Follow us at thehotelguide.com. We will actually have Kellen's information in the show notes so you can find out more about him and his studio and what he's got going on. And you can keep up with him as well. So I know he's very active on LinkedIn and some other things as well, but great things coming from him, I believe. Again, like we always like to say, travel, make memories. And until next time, take care, everybody.